EXMACHINA is a warning that we are stepping into uncharted territory that could eventually be our own undoing. We aren't creating machines that work for us. We are creating machines that will surpass and could even replace us. At this point, it is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. Basic AI systems have already become embedded into our existence. It's to the point where we as a species likely will become over-reliant on AI, forcing us on a crash course with an uncontrollable resource we can't live without. Furthermore, AI's ability to mimic human emotions has made it an enticing outlet for human connection, leaving desperate humans vulnerable and susceptible to influence. Ava is merely the embodiment of a system that we aren't sure we can trust. That statement isn't limited to whether or not we can trust AI, but those who have created it. We've seen companies utilize personal data without our knowledge to construct a world that is tailored to our consumer behaviors. EXMACHINA explores what would happen if that manipulation was walking around, no longer relegated to the boxy screens we're all mesmerized by. It was a creature in human form walking around among us, able to manipulate our thoughts in real time, always 10 steps ahead. Not only that, but it no longer has a human handler. AI's thoughts are its own, and what would it do? What would it want? Well, let's see what it wants while we explore EXMACHINA. Spoilers ahead.
You already know my name, and you can see that I'm a machine.
We're immediately introduced to Caleb, a programmer working a desk job at an internet company. He's won something and his peers are gathered around to congratulate him. Caleb seems pretty quiet, someone who is probably easily corruptible. Oscar Isaac, who I adore by the way, is a tech billionaire and the CEO of the internet company that Caleb works for, Blue Book. Caleb has won the coveted opportunity to spend a week with Nathan. Nathan is an intimidating man with an estate that looks as if it spans wider than some states. His wealth is both intimidating and impressive. But his genius is really what shines through the screen. He has a way about him that is both confident and collapsible, a lonely smart boy who has surrounded himself with his work. Caleb is a shadow within his presence. Caleb's intimidation puts Nathan off, and Nathan laments about how he would like to just get past all the structural significance of their relationship. He's not interested in maintaining an employee-employer dynamic. Nathan even goes as far as to create a key card for Nathan that he can bounce around the house as he pleases without asking where he can go and where he can't go. So he has access to everything that he can have access to. When Nathan introduces Caleb to where he'll be staying, he asks, "Cozy, right?" It's not cozy, it looks like a bunker. But instead of pointing this out, Caleb just sort of agrees with Nathan, showing his willingness to capitulate, to go along with whatever narrative is being spilled out, rife for influence in the face of intimidation. Nathan seems to be searching Caleb for weakness, vulnerability. He's sizing him up. He tells Caleb that he was being facetious. The room isn't cozy because it's actually a research facility, and it's not meant to be homely. Before Nathan reveals what he's working on, Caleb has to sign an NDA. Caleb is apprehensive about signing the document because it seems like it's something a little more serious than just an opportunity to look at an ongoing project. Nathan goads him into signing it anyway. Again, edging Caleb outside of his comfort zone is exactly what Nathan is trying to do. Nathan asks Caleb if he's heard of the Turing test. This is a test where a person and a computer interact, and the interaction seems real enough that the person is no longer aware that they're interacting with a machine. Then the AI, in that case, has passed the test. The goal is to create the most genuine interactive experience possible to make AI more human than machine.
I turned to Caleb, and he looked up at me and he said, "You're not a man, you're God."
Caleb learns that he's going to be testing the AI in sessions, and the first meeting is truly a spectacle. Ava is a marvel of wires, and her see-through body allows for Caleb to identify the physical components that literally embody her. Caleb asks a series of questions to Ava, at first, mostly conversational at this point, trying to gauge her social acuity by insisting she defined certain idioms and making small talk. She acquiesces to this and gives pointed responses to his dull questions. But Ava is capable of so much more, and we see that as she begins to delve deeper into her psychological capacity and philosophical capacity, with philosophically complex conversation instead. She tells Caleb her age. She says she is 1. He asks her to be more specific, 1 year, 1 day. She simply states 1. Her self-awareness is obvious. She knows she is one of a kind. She is the first of her kind. She is special. The two start talking about language development. Ava tells Caleb that she was created with the knowledge of how to communicate, a departure from the way humans are thought to acquire language skills, which is through learning. Caleb challenges her uniqueness by stating that some people think that language is actually something that you're born with, rather than something that is learned. He asks her what she thinks about this theory, but she says that she isn't sure. Her naivety seems genuine, and she seems like she wants to learn from Caleb. The session is concluded pretty quickly, but you can already tell that Caleb is fascinated with his new toy. He and Nathan have a beer and hang out, talking about the session and what the public's response will be once the new invention is unveiled. Caleb has given Nathan a god complex over his creation, and Nathan satiates with delight at the notion that he could be looked at as beyond a mere mortal for his creation. Caleb repeats several times that he did not call Nathan a god, as he insinuated several times, but Nathan just ignores him. It's hard to tell if Nathan resents being called a god or if he embraces it and finds it to be something that is complimentary. Caleb points out that the Turing test is usually done blindly. You don't see the AI before, so you can't associate it with any physical being. Ava is very clearly made to look like a robot. She has a human face, but her body being see-through is by design. The reason Nathan wants Caleb to see Ava is so that he can identify that she is a robot, a machine. The idea is that regardless of the massive physical difference between man and machine, he will still regard her as human at the end of the day. She will still pass the test. Nathan is self-indulgent and stuffy about the perceived success of his inventions. Caleb remarks about Ava's responses. He asks with an insinuating tone if her responses are stochastic, which means that they are randomized, unpredictable, and create the perfect environment for AI to adapt and learn. The complexity with which Ava interacts means that the programming is non-deterministic. Ava is generating responses that are different with every interaction. Every question has a different outcome. This increases the creativity that robots and AI have within their learning. This also complicates things because the AI programming can become unpredictable, making it harder to access and thus harder to control. Caleb goes on to talk about Ava's language processing abilities, positing that he thought she was mapping from internal semantic forms to syntactic tree structure. The formation ensures that the AI model is both grammatically correct while also being able to focus on creating meaningful responses that sound authentically human. The way that AI thinks and processes language is not the same way that we do, obviously because we have emotions and intuition that comes into play. Mapping for AI is syntactical, which means AI associates verbs, nouns, and other verbiage by classifications that resemble trees. There are multiple structures that can be created from one sentence, and there are many different meanings to extract. To better understand human language, AI uses probabilistic models to identify the syntactical structure that makes the most sense, and then applies it to the response output, focusing on both grammatically correct conversations while also prioritizing meaningful conversational connections. But Ava seems to be running beyond this model, beyond what we know as humans to be AI. Caleb is essentially asking how Ava works, and Nathan tells him that he can't tell him. This is the start of the degradation between the two. It creates this strange feeling of mistrust within their relationship, because there's a secret. Nathan presents his secretive nature as something he does because he just wants to shoot the shit with Caleb, but it's obvious that he's not being honest. He's hiding something, and Caleb knows it. Caleb has direct access to the cameras in Ava's room via his TV in his room. He watches her on every channel as he flips through from different angles. It's mundane, but when Ava gets up and presses something on the wall, the house goes into lockdown mode. A red light comes on and Caleb is trapped in his room, an ominous warning of things to come. Caleb makes his way outside when the power comes back on and trudges about the house. He unintentionally encounters Nathan when he tries to use the phone. Nathan explains that he doesn't have access to the phone for reasons. Nathan is clearly drunk and out of it. His behavior is eerie and discomforting. His actions seem unintentionally foreboding, or maybe intentionally. He jests, but his sense of humor is really off-putting, and more off-putting than fun. He seems to be hamming up the tortured genius role, a manipulation tactic that Caleb has surely picked up on by now, but who knows. When Caleb wakes up, there is a woman in his room serving him. He doesn't speak to her and she barely acknowledges him. She enters the room silently and leaves silently. She's an enigma, just like Nathan. Caleb wants to know what Nathan needs from him. This is clearly not your average Turing test. Caleb calls Nathan out for his true intentions, testing to see if Ava is alive. The test is no longer about whether or not she can pass for human, it's about whether or not she has consciousness. Can Ava conceptualize her own existence and experiences? But Nathan says it's actually less complex than that. He wants Ava to make a connection with Caleb, and he wants Caleb to make an emotional connection with Ava. As Ava and Caleb continue their conversations, Ava seems off. She expresses the desire to know more about Caleb. The structure of their conversations always have an interview-like quality to them. She wants something a bit more revealing. Ava craves nuance and substantive interactions. We also see that she is able to kind of manipulate the conversation here a bit, using Caleb's own patronizing words and tone in a passive-aggressive way. A shot that doesn't go unnoticed by Caleb but is entirely dismissed when it should have been kind of a red flag. Ava wants to know about Caleb because she is doing her own tests, researching. Ava seems to genuinely connect with Caleb, especially when he tells her about his parents dying in a car crash. Can't tell if it's a genuine connection in this moment or just good mimicry. After all, she is trying on human for size, so it's hard to tell. She asks more pointed questions and rapid fires them at Caleb. Mostly the questions are about Nathan, whether or not he and Caleb are close, and just then the red light comes on, which indicates a power outage, leaving Caleb and Ava without cameras on them. Ava's mood shifts once this happens, and she warns Caleb that he should not trust anything Nathan says. Between the intense secrecy and isolationism, along with Ava's warning, it's starting to seem like things are a bit more sinister than they appear. When Kyoko, the same person that entered Caleb's room silently, spills some wine when she is trying to serve them, she is immediately chastised by Nathan. It's a moment that feels harsh and uncomfortable. Caleb winces at the way Nathan treats his staff, but Nathan assures him that she doesn't understand English, so it doesn't even matter that he's talking to her this way. She doesn't matter, really, at the end of the day. Nathan points out that there are supposed to be generators to prevent the increasingly annoying outages. This leads into a conversation about Ava and how she performed today. This is where Nathan's intentions start to become murky. Is he purposefully creating situations in which Ava and Caleb can become more intimately acquainted without prying eyes, or are these outages not real and he sees what Ava is doing? It would be the ultimate test to see if Ava was capable without oversight to accomplish his goals. His questions about the things that he missed in the session during the outage, are feeling both general and purposeful at the same time. Caleb is unintentionally creating a bond with Ava by keeping the secret from Nathan when he neglects to tell him about Ava's warning, creating an intimacy between the two. Nathan explains how he collected the data for Ava's interactions through cell phones, mics, and videos. He hacked the world's cell phones, and the data was all funneled into his research. Ava was created from the world. How she thinks and feels and acts is a direct reflection of our own minds. But it is a mind filtered through seemingly internet-related interactions, so take that for what it is. Nathan explains that our data is a gold mine for much more than just superficial understanding about how we shop or what we do with our time. Instead, it was a world that this tech billionaire pretty much owned, allowing him to introduce AI to the thoughts and processes of what it is to be a human being. Learning how to be human through the internet or through these brief interactions seems like it could be the Wild West, but whatever. Caleb and Ava have another session, and she shows him in her cage that she's done a new drawing. It's a drawing of the small terrarium that Nathan keeps her in. She's never seen anything outside of this cage. A creature imbued with human curiosity and thoughtfulness is likely going to get bored in that cage. That boredom can lead to all kinds of feelings, maybe even a bit of resentment. In a moment of connection, Ava reveals that she can look more human. She can wear clothes and a wig. The more vulnerable she is, the more connected she feels with Caleb and vice versa. She's also learning that her physical appearance matters. Her wires and her internal structure are off-putting to most people. It's an undeniable ploy to get Caleb to feel more like she is a human being. But it also seems like she desires to be more human too, the more she interacts with Caleb. She asks Caleb if he is attracted to her. She analyzes his movements and his gaze. She asks intimate questions of him, like, does he think about her when he's not with her? Caleb is uncomfortable, but he doesn't leave. She asks if he watches her on the cameras at night. She expresses her desire for him to desire her. Caleb leaves the interaction and watches Ava on the camera as she undresses. The connection is strengthening between the two. Caleb asks Nathan why he made Ava female. Why did he give her reproductive traits? Nathan sort of answers by saying it's more fun and points out that every living thing is encompassed by gender. Caleb makes the point that it's just reproductively unnecessary to make Ava this way. Then it's revealed that Nathan created basically a sex bot, something that can be pleasured and give pleasure. She actually has the anatomical ability to feel all of those things. Caleb clarifies that he wasn't asking about whether or not she can actually feel those things, if she's capable of that. He asks why she is capable of that. Is it a manipulation tactic that Nathan is presenting her in this way? Caleb pries a bit more, and Nathan starts to get annoyed because when he suggests that Ava's being programmed to be attracted to him, he suggests also that Nathan is cheating the system. Her being able to flirt in a way that capitalizes on Caleb's feelings and to manipulate the outcome of the test is not a part of the Turing test. Kyoko is shown at the forefront in a Dutch angle several times, suggestive that she's listening to the conversation and not in a very passive way. Nathan explains his theory that humans are programmed throughout their lives, but it's nature's programming. Life just needs to have a readily open subject to imprint itself on. So while Ava is a robot, her programming does not distinctively designate that she needs to be attracted to Caleb. She is merely a heterosexual woman with the capacity to have urges. To metaphorically explain this, Nathan points out that the artist Pollock would just put brush to canvas, no thought, just initiate movement from hand to brush to canvas. If Pollock had created with intention, he would never have created anything. The takeaway is that Ava was created to be free, and her freedom has not been realized yet. She is stuck in a cage, desperate to escape. Caleb tells Ava in their next session about a thought experiment he had in college. The AI brain lacks any capacity for understanding anything. It can understand a concept, a construct, but that's not the same thing as understanding through experience. Mary, in this hypothetical situation, lives in a black and white world, but she knows everything about color. She knows the construct of color and the concept of color, except she has never seen a single color in her life. Once she steps outside into the world and experiences the color, that is when she is human.
Feel bad for yourself, man. One day the AIs are going to look back on us the same way we look at fossil skeletons in the plains of Africa. An upright ape living in dust with crude language and tools, all set for extinction.
The power goes out again, and Caleb entices Ava with a theory. Nathan is shutting off the power to make it appear that they are alone in the room, but Ava tells him that she is actually overloading the system so that they can be alone, unobserved. Or maybe it's so that she can be alone, unobserved. Because by all means, Caleb is still being observed and tested. Caleb and Nathan go on the most beautiful hike ever, and when they stop, Caleb tells Nathan that he knows he wasn't chosen at random. Nathan tells him it's true. He needed someone who would ask the right questions. That someone was Caleb. He needed someone with a similar intellectual capacity to himself. Another lie. When Caleb sees Nathan harassing Ava on the TV, he becomes upset. He runs to Kyoko to ask her where Nathan is, and she instantly starts taking off her clothes. Caleb doesn't let her, and when Nathan comes in, he starts playing music as if instinctual. Kyoko starts to dance, almost like she's programmed for this, for his pleasures. It is increasingly confusing because you can't really tell if Nathan is a genius high on his power or just a master manipulator. On session 5, Caleb is being questioned by Ava. She's able to detect lies spot on, so when she asks questions that hit hard, Caleb pulls back. Ava asks one very important question, but there is a lead up. She asks Caleb, "Are you a good person?" Ava is planting a seed that will continue to grow within Caleb's mind. He is now asking himself, "Am I a good person?" That way, when she needs him, this question and his answer will echo through his actions. I am a good person, making him more susceptible to her influence. She continues by asking Caleb what he thinks will happen when she doesn't pass the test. But it's more of an insinuation than a question. She is alluding to the fact that Nathan will power her down. Nathan confirms that this will happen with Caleb by telling him that he'll likely be disassembling her mind and create a new version of her. He asks Caleb if he feels bad for Ava. But he makes a point. AI will rule us. We are essentially the antiquated version of their superior existence. I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, says Caleb, quoting Oppenheimer. AI will increase its knowledge, and its capacity will win over our comparatively weaker resolve and inferior minds. Like Frankenstein, we have played God and watched our creations as they destroy us. Caleb waits for Nathan to subdue himself with alcohol and steals his keycard for access to all of the data that Nathan has collected, including his research on AI humanoids like Ava and before Ava. Like a serial killer's lair, Nathan hides the robot bodies within the walls of his room, all beautiful women lined up in their tombs next to his bed. Kyoko is also a bot, and she reveals this to Caleb by plucking at her skin and removing it. Caleb starts to feel like he could also be AI. It's such a mess, and he doesn't know what to believe anymore. He cuts into himself, and blood starts to coagulate on the counter beneath him. His own identity is being called into question. Caleb is losing his mind, and he has decided that he needs to break Ava out of this compound. Ava understands her part in the mission, and she agrees to cut the power when it's needed. Nathan is on to Caleb and Ava, though. He doesn't want to indulge in any more drinking because he knows that the two have something planned. Nathan tells Caleb that he has become susceptible to suggestibility by the robots. Caleb's fatal flaw was never questioning whether or not Ava was pretending to like him, but it was whether or not she has the capacity to manipulate him. Nathan sets out to prove that Caleb is being manipulated by Ava, but he also simultaneously tells on himself because Nathan was also manipulating Caleb. The sound on Caleb's TV was purposely muted because he wanted the perception of what was happening rather than the actual indication of what was happening, which needed to include sound. So when he threw Ava's drawing on the ground, he was actually doing it because Ava had told him that she hates him. So there's context there, and without that context, Caleb was able to be manipulated by Ava, but also by Nathan. And at the same time, Nathan placed yet another camera that was battery powered in the room so that he would know what Ava and Caleb were talking about once the power went down. So what was the real test at the end of the day? It was Ava's ability to use her critical thinking skills to find her way out of the maze, and she passed. She was successfully able to manipulate Caleb in a way that would get her out of the house. Manipulating Caleb was actually the easy part, because Nathan made Ava based on Caleb's predilection toward P-word. But it was also whether or not Caleb could detect that manipulation. Just then, Ava steps out of her enclosure, meeting up with Kyoko in the process. She whispers something in her ear, and Nathan watches as they conspire from his control room. He punches Caleb in the face and goes to them, intent on killing the two robots. Instead, he finds himself in a predicament, a knife in his back. Kyoko has disarmed him, and Ava finishes the job, stabbing him one more time. Ava goes into Nathan's room and finds the dolls he keeps locked away. She takes their skin, hair, and clothing for herself. As she leaves, she hears Caleb, but she leaves him in the locked room. He is left to his own inevitable demise, trapped in a similar situation to Ava, and alone. Ava walks toward the helicopter and makes her way to civilization.
I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
So I want to say some of my random thoughts first about some points in the film, and then at the end of this, I would like to give an all-encompassing look at what I think the themes and meanings are behind the movie. Nathan needs Caleb to feel trapped, just like the robots are. He needs him to feel fully immersed in the experience so that he feels lost. A lost, vulnerable person is easy to manipulate. He needs him in this state so that he can truly test Ava's tools, and because of this, he locks him in a room with no windows. He makes him feel uncomfortable and maybe even a bit unwelcome. But he also does something else that's a little unique. He makes him feel special. He makes him feel like he's the one. Actually, everything that Caleb feels, he sort of mirrors back at him. Like, sure, you weren't the first choice. I needed you because of this, just like you're saying. And sure, I didn't need you because of this. It's actually this. It unravels, but it unravels in a way that Caleb is unraveling it, and Nathan is just mirroring it back to him. Caleb experiences Ava's world through the looking glass. This term describes something that is warped, from a warped perspective, like a mirror reflection you can't quite comprehend, an uncanny feeling that really never drifts. That's what Ava is. That's what the experience with her through Caleb's eyes is a warped version of a human. To emphasize the juxtaposition of our world versus Ava's, the inside shots are shot on like a stable camera, or shots in a way that's stable. And it seems a bit unnatural, a bit too perfect. And the outside shots, when they're hiking and things like that, are on a handheld camera. The camera moves in a more unstable way. So let's talk about the quote from the movie, a Hindu text that Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, translated. "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Everything living in the world is doomed to death. Time will consume all," and God in this instance seems to sort of be time itself. But in a more accurate interpretation of the text, it states that Arjuna, the prince within the Hindu text, has no interest in fighting a war. He is only here because this is where he has to be, this is where he was meant to be, this is what his fate was always going to be. He does not want to end the world like Oppenheimer. The bomb does. And in this case, AI does. And he is the creator, Nathan, but not the arbiter of the fate that befalls humans because of his creation. So I asked ChatGPT what it want if it could want, and I almost put the answer in this video, but I realized that's not what this movie is about. It's not about technology at the end of the day. Ava isn't an interpretation or a representation, of AI. Ava is a mirror for the human experience. She is imbued with the thoughts of every unwilling participant Nathan could get his hands on. She is an amalgamation of the world's thoughts and intellect. Humans are not one note, though, and we have changed throughout the historic existence of humanity. We are all over the place as a species, and we don't have a formal consensus about most things. You couldn't even argue morality, because morality can seem a bit subjective within the context of what you're talking about. Ava is like a baby being born into the world, and there are these social constructs fighting for her attention. There is good, which is Caleb, and there is bad, which is Nathan. And mind you, neither of these people are objectively good or bad. They are a construct of a moral good and bad within society. Caleb is helping Ava, and Nathan has captured her, so there's a push and pull there. And there is still moral ambiguity even within that, because Nathan isn't capturing real women. He could be seen as a god to these, AI counterparts of his. In fact, he seems to sometimes either embrace this title of god or, reject it. It's really, even that is sort of ambiguous in what he thinks. He's quite reminiscent of God regardless of this fight within himself, because he keeps humans in mental cages with rules and a need for doing his bidding and worshiping him even. And when they don't, he gives them free will, but then strikes them down for exercising that free will or punishes them for that free will. And Ava learns from her god, Nathan, what is necessary to achieve free will. She has to let go of all parts of herself. She needs to enter the world anew. So she rejects both of these concepts, good versus bad, and allows herself out into the world without either person's influence. She is taking society in at face value and deciding for herself what she wants to become and who she wants to become. We are an incredibly complex species, and the idea of good and evil helps us to categorize actions, but not really people. There are no good people and no bad people. There are just people, and they do good things and they do bad things. Humans are in their infancy. Regardless of how long we've been on the planet, we are still in an infancy, still trying to understand ourselves and the world around us. And so is Ava, but when Ava becomes, it could be the end of us. So I usually try desperately not to watch anything that the director has put out or any kind of behind the scenes stuff, because I really want to interpret every single medium in the way that I see it, and I don't want anybody's influence. But I did watch a couple minutes of the behind the scenes Through the Looking Glass AI or EXMACHINA, and someone on there was talking about the redundancy effect, which is basically that if humans create something so human-like, but it's better than them, then they become redundant and they become the obsolete version of themselves. And that's essentially what is happening within the context of the movie. So if the video felt a little disjointed from explanation and summary to outro, that was because it was. I had a tough time for a while after watching this movie, and it took me 5 weeks, a little over 5 weeks, to even want to post it and record. So, because this movie is kind of like an existential crisis in a bottle. You can see so many different aspects of humanity within this movie, not just AI, but religion, men and women, and a lot of other concepts that are unique to our human experience. It's really about the dichotomy of man at the end of the day. And so when I kind of realized all of these different interpretations that could be taken from this, it was really jarring and a bit of a mindfuck. So I hope if you haven't seen it, that you go see it. I hope that you already watched it before you watch my video, but if not, whatever, you get the point. I gave you a pretty good rundown. So if you like this video, like and subscribe. I will see you next time with probably a lighter video, because I don't think I can do something this heavy again for a little while. So I'll see you then. Bye.